Hi, and welcome to Marketing Optimization with Alex Designs. I am your host, Alex Harris, and today we're here with Bobby Hewitt. How you doing, Bobby?
Very good, Alex. Thank you for having me on the show.
Great. Bobby is the owner of Creative Thirst. They're a conversion rate optimization agency that specializes in turning more clicks into customers to increase leads, subscriptions, and sales to improve clients' conversions. Bobby believes that improving conversion rates begins with understanding the psychology of the user because conversion takes place in the prospect's minds. And that's really what I want to talk with Bobby today. I've been following Bobby for a very long time. He's doing conversion forever. I'll let him explain that to you. But it's actually the first time we've ever chatted. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I love to understand what makes people buy. And when I was listening to your podcast, the second or third quote that you say is, "Websites don't sell. They help people buy." And I've used that in my presentations before, and I've always credited it back to you, and I really love that statement. I don't know if you made it up or not, but I think it's really a great statement. So to get started, Bobby, I'd like to ask, what is your definition of optimization, and how is it beneficial?
Well, thank you for using that statement. I'm flattered. It was actually adjusted from other statements and things that I've read. That's how I came up with it. So I kind of tweaked it a little bit and made it my own. But my definition of optimization is really a broad term. I mean, it could mean anything. It could mean marketing optimization, it could be conversion optimization, it could mean SEO optimization. And I really think the word optimization is part of the problem of the industry. But we'll get into that later. Maybe we'll go down that rabbit hole. My definition of optimization is really much broader than conversion. It starts with conversion, but it's really comes down to revenue. It's revenue optimization. So my view is really more of a holistic view to increase profits. A lot of people focus on just increasing conversions and just moving that percentage point. But really, the percentage point doesn't really mean anything unless you drill it down to the actual revenue, to the actual profit level. So what I mean by that is a lot of people will run a test and they'll get a lift and think it's awesome. They'll put it live and everybody's happy. But then on the business side of things, the business owner that's on the other side of that test gets that lift, and then all of a sudden it starts to decrease, and he's like, well, what happened to my conversion rate? What happened? I thought this was a 50% lift, and now I'm not seeing that lift anymore. You know, this could be 2 weeks down the road. This could be a month down the road. This could be 2 months down the road. There are a lot of other factors that go into it, which is why I like to take a broader definition than just increasing your conversion. Let's increase your revenue of your company.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It comes down to the bottom line. If you're not making revenue, you're probably not staying in business. So you can optimizing for traffic or whatever you want for forever. But if you're not really figuring out how to get that customer to convert, no sense in trying to scale. So
exactly.
Before we move into the rest of the show, let's tell people a little bit about your business and how you got started.
Sure. I actually started a very similar background to you, Alex. I started my career in marketing with a marketing degree. So I graduated college with a marketing degree. At that time, it was really pre-internet. And there was really no internet courses, so it was traditional marketing. And when I got out, they were all just marketing sales jobs. And I saw the rise of the internet, just starting. It was about 1995 when I graduated. And I took a few odds and ends sort of marketing sales positions, but really I saw the industry moving towards the web. So I always had like a passion and a talent for creativity and drawing. I've always been able to hand draw, and I even did a little penciling and painting. I took some painting classes sort of on the side. At one point, I was actually going towards comic book illustrator as a profession. And I interviewed at Marvel, and I submitted a whole bunch of pages. I actually got published at one point. But really, what always drove me back was the marketing and the art, or the design. I see marketing and design really as the same thing, just two sides of the same coin. And at the time, step back a little bit, I said at the time the marketing and the internet was really just was coming into age, and I really didn't want to do sales anymore. I was tired of it. I wanted to do real marketing.
Right.
And you can't really do real marketing when you're fresh out of college. So I taught myself web design, put together a portfolio, and landed a job at an advertising agency. They did marketing, they did print, they did web. And worked there for a couple of years. And I was always conflicted with what was sort of given to me versus my marketing side. So at that point, it was just making the client happy. You know, this needs to be blue. This needs to be bigger. We need to make this image here. The client doesn't like that picture. Change it. And none of it was really speaking back to the reasons why, speaking back to the other side of the coin, the marketing side of the coin. Of, well, this page, this website is really here for a purpose. It's really here to sell more, to get more opt-ins, to do some marketing task. And nobody was really looking at that. Mostly because they didn't have a marketing background. They just had a design background. And this always conflicted me. But what I did like about the agency realm was that it was structured as far as let's have a client brief, let's have a creative brief, let's talk to the creative director, let's get the goals for the page, for the project. It kind of fell apart from there. So leaving there at the time there was unfortunately 9/11 had taken place and the web had bottomed out and all the web work was gone and I got laid off. So from there I went to a in-house design position. And at that point I was the only designer. And I got to do a lot of work on their e-commerce site, on their corporate site, and it was a pretty big site. I won't name any names here, but I got direct access with a lot of the VPs of marketing. And my manager was remote in a different state, entirely different time zone, totally. So basically I had this direct access to all these marketing VPs, and they were coming to me directly to work on projects, and I got a very well-rounded sort of view of everything. But again, I ran into the same problems. Could you make this bigger? I don't like this image. It really wasn't coming back to what the customer wanted or what the goal of that particular piece was. It was really just satisfying the client, the marketing director. So I turned from satisfying a faceless client working through an account director, going to directly to the client, but really satisfying his or her whims rather than the goals of the piece.
Yeah.
And at that point, web analytics was just getting started. This was way before Google Analytics. This was the days of web trends was at the top of the heap. And I was lucky enough to get access to web trends when they implemented it at this company. And it was a brand new initiative for this company. So they implemented this web trends and nobody knew how to use it, how to look at any of this data. And I saw that data as the holy grail that I was looking for. Like that ties in the two pieces. That ties in the analytics side, the marketing side, and the design side. At first, I could point back to a number and say, look, here's why blue doesn't work, or here's why this headline is better than that one. Because the numbers tell it, not because of some subjectivity. And having the background in art and design, I understand where people are coming from, but my frustration was that design and art are two different things. Design is not subjective. Art is subjective. You either like a Van Gogh painting or you don't. That's art. Design is really marketing. Design is really just to get a person to complete a specific action. And my view of design really is quite broad, like my view of optimization because of that background. So my view of design is really the entire experience. It's not just how something looks or how the layout is or the colors. It's that and so much more. It's the design of the experience, the design of the steps, the design to get a person to do a certain action. So running through everything I could read at the time about web analytics, which was not much actually because there wasn't much printed at that point, I ran into Brian Eisenberg's books, or some of his early works. That was really my first exposure to conversion optimization. And I poured into everything I could read and learn about that. I went back to the old masters of the Ogilvies and read everything about copywriting and started to read about persuasion and some of Robert Cialdini's work. So I was sort of building this knowledge base of combining the design work, combining the analytics work, and combining the persuasion work. And I wanted to take it beyond just me as a one designer.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the company didn't want to go in that direction. So I decided to leave there. And when I left there, I went to a very small game company, and I worked as a designer, again, moving from a design position. But shortly after that, about a year after that, I transitioned to a marketing role in that small company. And that's when the rubber really hit the road. That's when all of my learnings and research and reading and everything really came together, because now I was finally in the marketing seat where I could make the decisions and do stuff. And yeah, so that was an awesome position. So really, from that, I essentially took that role as far as I could. And I have a passion for web analytics and conversion optimization. In fact, I even took one of the early courses of web analytics at what was at the time the Web Analytics Association. It's now the Digital Marketing Association. I took their online course. I think I was one of the very early courses to go through with those guys, and I graduated with winning the Jim Novo Award for academic excellence of receiving the highest grade point average in the web analytics course at the time. Yeah, there was only like one winner per year or per course work. So there's only a handful of us out there, and that was actually entirely at my own dime. So I'm extremely passionate about optimization and conversion and analytics. So I took that position as far as I could, and then finally left there to go out on my own to do conversion rate optimization, through Creative Thirst. So really, my journey to optimization came from my frustration of subjectivity through design.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities in my path as well. I have an art background, wanted to be an illustrator, and going into web design, it just made perfect sense. And then understanding analytics, I think there's two different kind of people when you get into our space: the people who essentially tell people what to do, and the people who actually execute. And you're one of those executors. You get in there in Photoshop, figure out how to actually design stuff, and that's a big differentiator from trying to conceptually figure out the right type of design versus actually designing it yourself. And being an artist and going through art school and being basically critiqued my whole life, and then being a web designer and having corporations or clients actually critique me, not only do you learn a lot about how to make the designs better and the psychology of that, but then you tie it in with data and you can really give real results to prove to the hippos why you should be doing certain things. So let's talk about your design process. Before you actually start designing or doing Photoshop, what are you doing to figure out the psychology of the potential customer's behavior?
I really get as deep and as close to the customer as possible. So I like to run a series of surveys with people that have bought and also people that haven't bought, and two different types of surveys, two different survey questions, so to really understand the psychology and the reasons why people bought versus why people didn't. And this is really more of the quantitative side or the qualitative side, right? So you get the input of what people say they did, why they did it, but you also need to balance that with actually talking to customers. So one of the other things I do is I actually pick up the phone and talk to some people that have purchased. And I kind of interview them and see, what their motivations were for buying, why they bought. Because on the one side, when you ask the surveys, you'll get a portion of the answer, but you won't get the whole answer. by actually interviewing someone and talking to them and the reasons why and some of the things that were going through their head, you can pull out more information than you can with just a simple open-ended survey. Open-ended surveys are great, and if that's all you can do, that's awesome. So I couple those two soft pieces of data together to get a view of the customer. And then I obviously, like I mentioned, with the Web Analytics, a big proponent of it, I look at the data to the hard numbers to tell me what people are doing on the page, where they're going on the page. I'll use heat map technology. I'll use some user testing depending on the project. I'll even use ClickTail and things like that, where you can actually see what people are doing. And again, that's each one of those things is just a little piece that you have to pull together to get the holistic view.
So as you pull these little pieces together, I guess, of your ideal audience and that kind of like the perfect customer, do you kind of say, oh, this person is no fit, so we're going to just maybe just not market to them as much? And then how do you figure out where to drive that individual target audience to the right area of your website, whether they're in the low portion or the high portion of the funnel or that buying cycle? How do you really figure out where you're going to actually start designing to get the maximum ROI?
Well, you have to track that back through the funnel to the traffic source. So I guess one of the dirty little secrets in conversion optimization is that some of the really huge gains get really specific with the traffic source. So if you break up your traffic into like direct traffic and cold traffic, or people that are coming from a house list or an email versus an affiliate list, the motivation of those two different people is completely different. Also, the trust level of those people are completely different. Someone coming from cold traffic, you need to build up a lot more trust than someone from your email house list. So if you tie back the intent back to the top level traffic source and then segment your tests based on that, that's how you can get the really big gains. A lot of people just funnel it all together and say all the traffic's going to this one page and let's improve the conversion on that one page. And you can get lifts that way, but it's usually in the single digits, double digits if you're lucky. Really the triple digit numbers are through the segmentation.
Yeah. So I guess the quick question is, what are some tips to get those to get the big impact type of results? Is it testing a full page and just going straight impact, or is it doing the iteration process and testing pieces and pieces? What are some tips that people can do to their site to really improve their conversions?
Well, unfortunately, it depends. It's not a simple answer. It depends on the product. It depends on the offer. It depends on the customer. It depends on that traffic source too.
Yeah.
But you can go through a generic framework. You can reduce the friction on the page. You can reduce the anxiety. You can make things clearer. I think the key really to optimization is continuous optimization. And a lot of the mistakes that I see basically is people abandon a concept way too soon. So, for example, they'll test something and it won't work, and then they'll scrap it and test something completely different. When they should have stuck with that something, if that something matched the hypothesis and matched the data that they had gathered previously to the test to sort of direct them to what to test. So one example actually is a test that I've recently done where the data was telling me, and based on the product as well, is that the people coming to the page needed to increase their trust in the company and the product in order to purchase. So the test that was ran, I ran it with a copywriter, and the copywriter's approach was basically change the headline, change the lead, and he did 3 or 4 different lead-ins to this long-form sales letter. And they all lost. But one of them showed some promise in the data, not in the actual conversion numbers because it was a loser. But when I looked deeper at the click-tail analysis and the heat map analysis and what people were actually doing on the page, there was this one section on the page where they kind of slowed down. They still didn't buy on that page, but they slowed down. And that section supported the hypothesis, supported the data that these people needed more trust. That section included video testimonials. And it was a grid of about 4 different video testimonials. And it lost. And I was scratching my head for a while, and I thought deeply about it and said, why did that lose? The hypothesis and all the data prior to that was telling me that people need trust. And a video testimonial is a great way to trust. And it was also supported through a brief bulleted copy of what the video said. So it talked to both modalities, right? It talked to the people who are readers and the people who are watchers or viewers. So it wasn't a modality issue. And most optimizers would probably just stop there and move on to the next sort of radical redesign test. But this is what I mean by abandoning a concept too soon. So I took that section out. I took those 4 video sections out. And I did another follow-up test, and I moved the position of it. And just by moving the position of it, I tested 3 different positions. The one that lost was really early in the conversation, really early in the page, right after the new headline and the new lead. So I put the old headline, but basically went back to the original and inserted this 4 grid of video testimonials at different positions within the page. And it actually had a 30% lift and a 99% statistical confidence level. Now, that test is actually still running. It's only been about a week. And again, most optimizers would kind of stop there. So the tool said it's 99% confidence. It's 30% lift. Awesome, we won. But I like to stick with things a little bit longer just to make sure they hold. Because really, we're dealing with revenue at this point. We're dealing with a business's the way that they pay their employees. We're dealing with food on the table. So to make a decision based on something after it's been running for a week is a little too soon for me. I like to be truly sure, again, dive deep into those numbers and that data to make sure that it's going to stick and it is worth doing the changeover. But we never would have gotten to that point had we abandoned the original tests that lost.
Thank you. I want to go back to the original question we started. 2 more questions. One, let's talk about optimization. What if you weren't calling it optimization, then it'd be a better word for it or category for it. How could people look at it differently?
That's a good question, because I always thought the word is part of the problem. We have SEO, we have CRO, we have when a marketer thinks of optimization. At least what I've found is that they often think of traffic, optimizing the traffic, because search engine optimization is such a prevalent and well-known sort of term, SEO, and it has the word optimization in it. When we say conversion optimization, a lot of times we get some funny looks. And although I think we've made a lot of headway in the last several years in the CRO space, we still have a lot more to go. But I think the problem is in the terminology. I don't really have a solution, unfortunately, because it is optimizing, it is improving. But when we think of that, we always think of traffic, because that's the easy way to get more sales, or at least that's what marketers think. The easier way actually is to do conversion rather than traffic. Start with your conversion first and then ramp up your traffic. But a lot of times, people are really just getting started. They don't have the traffic in place, and they do have a traffic problem.
Yep.
So I could see where people get caught up in focusing on just traffic alone and then going down that traffic slippery slope.
Yeah, because what I've seen, even when I was researching the title for the show, I was trying not to go with something optimization or even something with marketing. But what I found is that because I went through like definitions, measure, maximize. Essentially, if you're not measuring, you're not meeting your goal, and that whole process is optimizing. But figuring out the right direction for your company, whether it's your accounting, your logistics, your HR, your website, your marketing automation, your lead generation, all of that takes into account how you can measure that and grow. And so optimization, became the title for the show because it was essentially a good fit for all of those aspects. And because it had a little bit of buzz to it, I know it is definitely a buzzword. But I think it's a good point in our career for it to start growing even further, because most people don't know what conversion is. You look it up; it's either a math formula or maybe they're something religious related. But it's becoming more common that people understand what SEO is, and those two merged together. Search in general has moved to a conversion metric, because if you're not optimizing your landing pages or your website for speed or being responsive or coded friendly, all of that's optimization of your code. So it all just plays into how you can increase your conversion rates.
You're absolutely right. And I guess it depends on the sophistication of your audience.
Yeah.
If you're going after a more sophisticated viewer, then the optimization makes sense.
Yeah.
But again, everyone's definition of optimization is completely different.
Yeah, this is definitely for the advanced marketer. But I do want to give some practical ideas for people who run their own sites or are working in marketing departments and running other people's sites. Let's close by giving some people some real takeaways of ideas they can do just to either test on their site, redesign their landing pages, or any ideas for them to influence their optimization practices. And also let's tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So I would answer that by going back to the structure of the test and what you're testing here. I'd say start with understanding what people are doing. Look at the data, see where people are clicking, see where people are going on the page, what page they've come before, what page they're going after. Try and gain insights from that. Then go a level deeper to start with understanding the why, right? Start doing customer surveys, buyer surveys, people that didn't buy, people that exited your page, do surveys, call some customers, and see if you can understand the reasons why they bought from you versus someone else, why they bought then. And then put those two pieces of data together and structure a test to answer a single hypothesis question. So come up with your hypothesis is based on that data of the what and the why. Then everything that you do on that test should answer that hypothesis. So let's get more hands-on there. A lot of people start with A/B testing because it's easy. And they usually start with just changing one thing, changing a headline. This headline A versus headline B, or call to action A versus call to action B. That's good if you're first starting, you want to get your toes in the water, but you're not likely to get a real meaningful gain by just changing that one element. Right. So what I do is actually I do a variable cluster test, which combines a whole bunch of variables together. Now, there's good and bad with this. If it's not structured and if it's not thought of the right way, it has the potential to go haywire. It's kind of like giving the keys to the car to your 16-year-old driver, right? Without any driving real lesson, they can get where they're going, or they can get into a terrible accident. Right. So it's really how you use the tool, not the tool itself. That's the problem. So the problem is when someone hears that, they say, "Oh, well, you're just changing a whole bunch of things, and how do you know what worked and what didn't?" Yep. And the answer to that is, well, yes, you're changing a whole bunch of things, but if you change a whole bunch of things around a single hypothesis, if you support all of your variables as a cluster, you can still get answers. So if you just change willy-nilly, you won't get any answers. If you change, like, for example, if the hypothesis is that the people are afraid to buy, there's some anxiety around the purchase, they need more trust. So what we can do is we can we can put trust marks on the page, right? We can put secure signs, verified signs. And if we go deeper into that trust mark, that trust hypothesis, we can add testimonials. And it also supports the hypothesis of adding more trust. And we can do a couple other things that also support this, as long as they're all supporting that one hypothesis, that one question you're looking to answer. If we increase the trust level on this page, would more people buy? Then you can combine all those changes into a cluster of variables and still get answers. Now, you'll get a bigger lift that way if your hypothesis was correct, if your data was correct, that they do need more trust, that there is anxiety around trust on the page. Mm-hmm. But you still won't know which particular trust element had the most lift. You could do a multivariate test to find that out, but by structuring it as a variable cluster A/B test, you can get a much bigger gain or a bigger lose right off the bat. And you can know right away if the direction of this hypothesis is true or not. And if it is, you can get a much bigger gain in a much shorter amount of time. Now, the bad side is that, yes, you will not know which particular element contributed to that lift. But you're running a business here. You're not running a science experiment, although it's treated with a lot of science behind it. So does it really matter to the business which particular element, or does it matter that you got the bigger lift?
Yeah, you just find out what maybe has moved the needle a little bit and then just keep on pushing towards that and ramping up, raising the control each time and creating a new baseline and learning from your past, pulling all those failures into a map to figure out how to not make those failures going forward and optimize them. And if you think that something should have won, try to figure out why it didn't win, in a way, like if you have a lead form or something and it's just not converting, it could be the offer, it could be the messaging, or it just could be your traffic. What the actual problem is, there's usually a solution to it. You just have to figure out the right path to it.
That is true.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. Let's tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. You can find me at my site, creativethirst.com. You can find me on iTunes. You can find me on Twitter at Bobby Hewitt, BobbyHewitt, or you could reach me directly at bobby@creativethirst.com.
And the iTunes podcast is the Practical Conversion podcast?
No, actually, that's Francis's podcast. My podcast is Conversion Optimization. What's the title of it? It's been a while since I produced an episode. Okay. Conversion Optimization Academy.
We'll edit it out. Awesome. I really appreciate your time and have a great day.
Thanks.